Napoleon, people, you have already learned Napoleon. Anybody who wants to share with us the background of Napoleon Bonaparte? Who is Napoleon? When was he born? What was the name of his father and all that? Yes, Kembabas, you can go on.
Good afternoon, everyone. So basically, a brief background on Napoleon. Napoleon was fortunate to be born a Frenchman, given that his descendants were Italians originating from an Italian island called Cosca Island. He was born in 1769, a year after Cosca Islands was annexed to France, hence his status as a Frenchman. He was born in a family of 13 children and happened to be among the 8 children surviving uh, starvation and diseases that attacked 4 of his siblings that passed away. His father, Charles Bonaparte, on annexion of Cosca Islands to France, forged a noble status to get him into a military school. He he was an ambitious um, person, and this traces back to his personality. Since from a young age, he had always desired to become a military leader, and he was focused and always watched movies and had um, fake. He pretended to be a soldier, which grew his ambition not to become a military leader. The French Revolution helped boost him career-wise and rise to the ranks, which enabled him to later on gain his status as uh, Napoleon the Great or the French Emperor. Yeah.
I am not getting you now. Are you still on?
Teacher,
Because I'm
I had
not
finished
hearing you
submitting.
anymore.
I had finished
Right.
submitting.
So
Yeah.
she was still talking about Napoleon Bonaparte. You had, okay, thank you very much. Right. So you can see this is, I think, some rough timeline about Napoleon. The time when he was born, you can see 1769, he's born at a place called Ajaccio. 1799, 10 years later, they sent him to school in, um, in France. Remember, he was born a Frenchman. So in 1799, they sent him to the military school of Brienne, where he studied mainly with the sons and daughters of people from the middle class. In other words, the nobles. He was one of the poorest person in the military school. Then by 1784, they admitted him to École Militaire in Paris, where he was to train as a military officer, artillery officer rather. In 1785, he graduated. The course was only for 1 year. So he became a second lieutenant coming out with a qualification in military artillery. He was now a qualified artillery officer. 1789, Napoleon now witnessed the French Revolution breaking out like serious. And then 1793, he gained fame after the siege at Toulon. 1795, he surprised an uprising in what is commonly known as the Wave of Grape Shot. 1796, Napoleon married his wife. Josephine Johannes. And a few months after he had married his wife, he sent him, they sent him for the Italian campaign. So Napoleon left his newly married wife to go and command the Italian campaign. Everything was moving on well for Napoleon. And then on, things were still going on. So in 1797, Napoleon defeated the Italians. I mean, he defeated the Austrians and now brought back victory to France. Then in 1798, Napoleon was sent by the French government to go for the Egyptian campaign, which was not very successful. So in 1798, still in August, the French troops were destroyed, the famous Battle of the Knives, by the British. So Napoleon was beginning to experience some setbacks. Then in 1799, Napoleon secretly went back to France. What people normally say, Napoleon escaped and went back incognito, incommunicado. He went back to France, landed in southern France, and many people were very happy that Napoleon did not die during the Egyptian campaign. So, in 1799, Napoleon, with the help of his brother, overthrew the Directorate government and he established the first consul, where Napoleon himself was to be the first leader, and then others would come in. So that is briefly about Napoleon's what? Napoleon's background, or maybe briefly about some of the major events that happened before Napoleon actually became the leader of France. And maybe at this point, if someone has any query, if someone has any addition, maybe we could do any compliment, any query, or we proceed. Any questions so far? Or we just continue? Yes, Kelvabans.
Sorry to take you back, Tisha. I have an inquiry on the consuls.
Hmm.
How exactly did they come into place? My only understanding of the consul or the consulate is that he was there are three consuls and he was the head of the first consul, but that's all to it. Could you throw more light, please? Yeah.
Hmm. How was it supposed to work? Okay, any other question? How was, or any someone who wants to explain that? How was the console supposed to work? If there's anyone who has a clear idea. Hmm? Anyone, anyone who has an idea about how the console would work? Anybody? How did Napoleon agree with his friends? According to the new government that was formed, how was it supposed to work? Okay, so this is it. There were three consuls, and the three consuls included Napoleon himself, who was the first consul, and then the second consul, and then we had the third consul. So in practice, the first consul had almost all the powers, while the other two were more like advisors. Okay. So Napoleon had all the powers to appoint and disappoint, but the others were to work as his advisors. Now, the Constitution of 17, the Constitution year of the Constitution of 1799, the Constitution gave enormous authority to Napoleon Bonaparte. He could appoint ministers and generals and even local officials. The government structure was generally in the hands of Napoleon. The Senate, the tribunal, the legislative body, the Council of State, all of them were under Napoleon. Now, it looked democratic because people could vote in plebiscites, people could vote in referendums, people could have some degree of freedom to vote. So, in other words, that is how the council would work. If you are the first consul, then all the powers are in your hands. It would be like right now here in Uganda, we have three organs of the state. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, and then we have the parliament. So, if you look at it, it looks like all of them are at the same level on paper. But if you look at it, it is the executive that is actually taking charge of everything. So you find that the parliament and then the judiciary now only play the advisory uh, service. So what would happen is that in case there would be another first consul, then that first consul would take office, and then that first consul would also have the authority and power that Napoleon was having. So that is how the consul was established. In other words, the first consul had all the executive powers to appoint all people who would work, and the rest would simply be working like advisors. But we all know that Napoleon did not give any opportunity to the other consuls to come in and also rule. You see that? So that is how it worked. I am hoping I have answered you. So let's go on to other issues that we are supposed to be looking at. We are here explain the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. Explain the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. Now here we are going to brainstorm. This is the topic that all of you have done. In other words, what factors then led to the rise of Napoleon by 1799? Was it because of his connection to very important people? Was it because of his hard work? Was it because of his ambition? Exactly what could have led to the rise of Napoleon? So I want us to go slowly. You can give us a few points, or if you feel free, you can actually take us through the whole all the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. Who is ready to teach us the factors that helped Napoleon to rise to power? Yes, I am waiting for volunteers to show up and explain to us factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. Yes, who is set to teach us factors that led to the rise of Napoleon? He, I am going to pick at random if this is what is happening. Yes, let me look for someone to talk about Napoleon's rise here. Joan. Joan, please say something about Napoleon, factors that led to his rise. Joan, are you there? Okay, I am seeing people that are taking the time uh, trying to figure out the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. Let me display the factors, and maybe here people will get ideas. so that people can explain what they see, the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. They are there. Those are the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. So maybe at this point, so someone can pick out a factor of his or her own and explain how did luck lead to the rise of Napoleon? How did the courage help him? How did the French Revolution? So you pick out a factor that you think you can explain, and then you take us through which of those factors can you explain so that we move faster. How did luck help Napoleon? Yes, Kembabas.
So luck helped Napoleon in two ways, depends on how you look at it. If you look at it
Mm,
from the perspective of his birth, the fact that he his his birthplace, Cosca Islands, was annexed to France just a year before he was born, one could
mm,
consider that as luck because he was able to be born a Frenchman and enjoy the opportunities or benefits that came with being a Frenchman.
great.
Then
Okay.
another way of looking at it is the fact that he was among his mother's surviving children because we are told that there were 13 children, but 8 survived and 4 died of diseases and starvation due to the poor living conditions. But one could say
Mm,
he was lucky the fact that he was able to live and be among his mother's surviving children.
mm,
Um, One could also look at luck in perspective of his father being able to forge a noble position and get him a place in a military school, despite him not being born a noble. He was lucky enough to get into a school, and yet his original status didn't grant him that opportunity to actually attend um, military school in France during that time.
thank you very much, Kembabas. Luck can be explained in many ways still. Even the fact that Napoleon was very close to Maximilian Robespierre. Remember, Maximilian Robespierre was executed during the French Revolution. So if we say that Napoleon survived the French Revolution, that also is an element of luck. And the mere fact that the French Revolution broke out and then eliminated most of his potential rivals so that Napoleon remained without any competitor. Also, that is another element of luck. If you look at the fact that Napoleon by 1799, he had his brothers. I mean, he had his brother. I think that was Lucien Bonaparte, who was one of the directors in the directorate government and who actually helped him to overthrow the government he was working for. Even that is an element of luck. And Napoleon getting married to Josephine of Johannes, who was a very powerful and prominent figure in France. Also, that was an element of luck. So Napoleon was able to rise to power to conquer the directed government by 1789 in very many ways because of what? Because of luck. So Napoleon is a product of luck in respect to his rise to power. Anyone else, if you think you can pick out the factor there and explain, yes, I see Prixen. Hey, this name is hard for me. Okay, your hand is up. Please unmute yourself and explain to us 1 or 2 points there.
Okay, good afternoon to you all. So literally, I'm going to explain the
Good
weakness.
afternoon.
Yeah, I'm literally going to explain the weaknesses of the electoral government. So the weakness of the electoral government of
Okay.
1795 to 1799 partly assisted to Napoleon's rise to power. this can be explained or to show that the Directory government greatly relied on Napoleon Bonaparte in suppressing both internal and external uprising. For instance, in 1796, he went to the Italian campaign and drove the Australians out of Italy. So, yeah, that's how I can explain it.
Thank you very much. That is clear, aloud. Anyone else wants to explain anything else? Speak out the point. The points are here. And explain to us, how did these issues lead to the rise of Napoleon? For example, courage. Where did Napoleon demonstrate courage? If you remember, Napoleon demonstrated courage during the Italian campaign. They say the army was a ragtag army. It was a very poor army, very poorly equipped, very badly dressed. But Napoleon was able to persuade that army and took it to war. All right, Baba Z, you can explain one or two points and we move.
Um, okay, I'll start with his marriage to Josephine. So
Yeah.
Josephine was one of the
Funny,
directors
we decided we're
of the
going to go
time.
off.
Mm.
So basically, his
Take care.
association with her as his wife helped
Mm.
gain him favor because she was a, okay, for lack of a better word, she was a prostitute to one of the directors of the directory government called Barras.
Balance. Yes.
Yes. So basically, him marrying her enabled him to easily get favors or get
I
favored
go
by
back home.
Barras, who was the director, one of the directors on the directory government. And as you said, she was also influential, which helped him grow. Because if you marry an influential person, you can easily use their affiliations to grow. Then another point I can explain is the French Revolution. So basically, the French Revolution gave birth for Napoleon to show his military abilities and also gave him opportunity to rise through the ranks. Like when he stopped the royal uprisings, which gave him basically a platform to show his skill, which put him out there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, the French Revolution helped Napoleon in very many ways. There are other ways we shall go and see. The annexation of Corsica. Yes, Corsica was annexed a year before Napoleon was born. But when Corsica became a French territory, or when Corsica became part of the French, part of France, now it was clear that even Napoleon was also part of France. So that gave him indeed a lot of opportunities to enjoy as a Frenchman. That is how Napoleon was able to join the military school of Brienne in 1779. That is how Napoleon was able to join the Paris Military School of Paris in 1784. And in 1785, he qualified as an artillery officer. All that was because of the annexation of what? Corsica. Anybody else want to explain other points? Let me first explain this one as other prepare ambition. Napoleon was a very ambitious young man. At the age of 10, Napoleon had already made up his mind that he would become a soldier. I already knew what he wanted by the age of 10. And that is how he was able to join the military school of Brienne. And that's how he was later able to join the military school of Paris. That is how he was able to be absorbed in the French army. That is how they made him to become the commander of the French army in 1796. And that is how he was able to be sent back for the Egyptian campaign of 1798. So without ambition, Napoleon perhaps would not have risen to power easily. So in other words, it goes back to knowing what he wanted. By 1779, Napoleon already knew that he wanted to become a soldier. So that ambition, that energy made him to fight so hard. They say when Napoleon was at the military school, they nicknamed him the 1 million artillery officer. Napoleon excelled in science and mathematics at the military schools, and therefore he was so hardworking, and perhaps that was partially because of his poor background. So that ambition made him to rise to power easily. Michelle, your hand is up. You want to add something or you have a question?
I wanted to talk about the family background of a Napoleon.
Yes,
So
please go on.
he came from a humble family background that provided him with determination, courage, endurance, and ambition in 1778 at the age of
Mm,
9. This
okay.
made him to work hard and
Mm,
excel in military science,
mm.
undertaking the race military campaign that later helped him in capturing power in 1799.
Are you done?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Sometimes poor background can be the only factor that makes people to work hard. Although these days, many people don't work hard even if they are from poor backgrounds. But anyway, for the case of Napoleon, he was so hardworking, so ambitious, so lucky, so courageous, and so rising to power wasn't something complicated to him. He worked so hard largely because of his poor background. So every step he took, it made it so easy for him because of his family background. Napoleon had so many sisters. By the way, when they just tell us that Napoleon had, there were 13 of them in the family, do they tell you about the names of these siblings of Napoleon? Who knows some of the names of Napoleon's siblings? Some of the brothers of Napoleon. Yes, Michelle.
Uh, I only know Louis Bonaparte.
Louis Bonaparte. Okay, yes, that is one of Napoleon's siblings. We had Louis Bonaparte. Any other people? Yes. So Napoleon had so many siblings, just to mention a few of them. Let me see if there are any answers in the chat. Not yet. Lucien Bonaparte. So we had Joseph Bonaparte. We had Lucien Bonaparte already mentioned. Elisa Bonaparte. We had Louis Bonaparte. We had Pauline Bonaparte. We had Caroline Bonaparte. We had Jerome Bonaparte, just to mention but a few. How many of those I have mentioned? Joseph Bonaparte, Lucien Bonaparte, Elisa Bonaparte, Louis Bonaparte, Pauline Bonaparte, Caroline Bonaparte, and Jerome Bonaparte. Yes, Kimbawas, you had this up.
So I have an inquiry. In some textbooks, they refer to Lucien Bonaparte as his
Hmm.
cousin and not his biological brother.
Like who?
Lucien Bonaparte is referred to as his cousin, not his brother, in some
As
textbooks.
his cousin in some
Yes,
textbooks.
yes. So,
Okay.
what relation do we take? Do we
It-
refer to him as his brother or his cousin?
okay. Let's see, Lucien Bonaparte, Prince of Sinino, politician who opposed some of his policies. Looks like Lucien was his real brother. Let me just get it here very fast. Lucien was his real brother. I'm just getting it here very fast. So I'm getting Lucien Bonaparte was his biological brother. Yes. So maybe there are others that we didn't talk about because many of them they died when they were still young. So Kembaba's Lucien Bonaparte was Napoleon's real brother. Now those who died before Napoleon became the leader, we had Napoleon Bonaparte. There was one called Napoleon Bonaparte who died before when he was very young. Then you had Maria Anna Bonaparte, that one also died. Then you had another one, Maria Teresa Bonaparte, that one also died. But maybe those are not very important. So the ones who survived, by the who grew up with Napoleon, we had Joseph, we had Napoleon Bonaparte himself, Lucien Bonaparte. Then we had Elisa Bonaparte, Louis Bonaparte, Pauline Bonaparte, Caroline Bonaparte, and Jerome Bonaparte. Those eight grew up with Napoleon. Now people know. So let us continue with other factors. We haven't finished these factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. We have explained luck, courage, French Revolution, annexation, Corsica, ambition. Okay, then we still have Napoleon's marriage was also explained, his character, and then personality. Who wants to explain any of those two? Character, personality, improvement in scientific equipment by the time Napoleon came to power. How did Napoleon's character lead to his rise? Napoleon rose to power largely because of his character. But what was unique about his character? Napoleon was very courageous, we all know. Napoleon was very ambitious, all know. Napoleon was very hardworking. Yes. Michelle, something you want to add?
I wanted to explain about a Napoleon's a Napoleon's personality.
Go on.
A Napoleon was gifted with the power of front
Mm,
sight, which helped him to assess situations and manipulate them into his advantage. For example,
mm,
the French Revolution that helped him to exploit in order to
mm.
become a very powerful leader in France.
Thank you very
That's
much.
all.
Yes, thank you very much. So that is about his personality. Very able to manipulate situations and make them all in his favor. Correct. Thank you. I think this one about friendly relations with prominent people, I've already explained it. We talked about Josephine. We talked about Lucien Bonaparte. We talked about Director Barras. And we talked about Maximilian Robespierre. All those were very prominent figures that Napoleon related with, and they made it easy for him to rise to power. Yes, Brixen.
Okay, for me, I'm going to explain the role played by his father.
Mm,
So it should be noted that, like before, like Napoleon's father forged to have been a noble. Then
mm,
after, remember him forging to be a noble, it won him a scholarship for Napoleon Bonaparte.
yes.
Then Napoleon getting a chance to study from those big military schools, that is to say, Ecole, and
Mm,
I think from mine. Then
mm,
studying from these schools, he acquired different skills. Remember, he studied political science, that he studied how to read maps. Hence, this helped him rise to power.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, I think now we have exhausted the factors that led to the rise of Napoleon. We have exhausted those factors. So let us move on to the next slide and we see what is there. Achievements in Napoleon's domestic policies. Napoleon achieved greatly. Napoleon, after capturing power and establishing the council, of course, he had now to go down and then start doing his work as the leader of France. What are those things that he focused on? Of course, Napoleon worked on education. We all know Napoleon did a lot on public works. Napoleon did a lot on how to reward people using his own system. Napoleon introduced a new constitution that was called Code Napoleon. Napoleon did quite a lot. Napoleon established the first National Bank of France that gave the people of France loans, and the people were able to develop in agriculture. Napoleon beautified France by introducing street lighting for the first time in the history of France. And at the end of it all, Napoleon did a lot of work for the people of France, and the people were happy with him. So these are some of the achievements. I have not been able to bring out all of them, and maybe people will again uh, pick out some of these policies, pick out one policy and talk about which one you want to talk about: education, reconciliation of the state with the church, or promoting agriculture. What are some of the areas where you think Napoleon surely performed very well? Yes, Kebabas.
He performed very well in different areas, but I'll talk about the education, the improvement of education in France. So before Napoleon took over, the state of education in France was extremely poor, and actually 60% of the French population was illiterate. Um, in Napoleon's rule, he introduced the construction of different educational institutions, and he's noted for putting into place lice. I don't know whether pronounced as lices or likes, but yeah, there are semi-military schools, secondary schools he put in place to promote military education and generally improve education in France. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Napoleon improved education. That's the bottom line. Built so many elementary schools. Those are primary schools. Napoleon even built the first national university of France that had 17 academies. Napoleon promoted science. Napoleon promoted mathematics. Napoleon generally did very great things in education. So Napoleon achieved greatly in the area of education. The people of France were happy with him because of what he did in the area of education. Anyone else wants to speak about any of Napoleon's policies and where you think we should score him well? Which one have you picked? Yes, let me know if you have picked anything about Napoleon that you want to speak about. Anyway, let us start with this one here. Napoleon made constitutional reforms. The Constitution of France was modified by Napoleon, and Napoleon introduced a number of things. Like we said, as the first consul, Napoleon had all the powers to appoint ministers and appoint most of the people in the positions of government. But it's also important to note that Napoleon promoted these people on merit. Napoleon appointed these people on merit because that's what the Constitution provided for. And therefore, by doing that constitutional reform and also introducing the Code Napoleon that worked, and many people in France and Europe liked, Napoleon was liked by the people of France, so Napoleon scored very well. And then Napoleon established a very good financial system. We said he first introduced the first national bank of France. What was the role of this bank? As a central bank, its role, one, is to monitor the performance of smaller banks, the commercial banks, all work under the guidance of the central bank. But with this kind of arrangement, Napoleon was able to give out loans to people who to expand their businesses and also to start new ones. But most importantly, the impact was that people were able to get jobs, the economy was thriving, performing very well, and therefore Napoleon again scored greatly in that area. Then, if you look at Napoleon, how he promoted industry and commerce, it is true that Napoleon mainly wanted to promote trade. And trade here meaning that he wanted the people of France to thrive in the trade. Although later we are going to see how he got into trouble with the Britain because he was trying to compete with the Britain in a number of ways. But Napoleon promoted industry and commerce, and he did this through good financial policies because after introducing these financial reforms, then people are able to get jobs, people are able to do business freely, people are able to do everything in peace because of his. Yes, Michelle, your hand is up. Michelle, you have something to ask? Okay. In the meantime, let me first share the work in the notes because it looks like what I am talking about here looks like I'm speaking Greek. So let me first share here what is in the notes so that people can see what I'm talking about. Here, just very fast. Can you see what I'm sharing? I hope you can. Yes, you should be able to see that. Napoleon Bonaparte's domestic policies, they are there. So the first one, we need to have achievements. Number one, Napoleon's constitutional reforms. Yes, Napoleon made a 1799 constitution that favored his rule. After his coup, he changed the earlier direct constitution into a constitution. And in this constitution, all executive powers were vested in him. I already talked about that. He established a fine financial system. The tax collection was fine. He introduced a new tax system that worked in favor of everybody. Napoleon promoted industry. Specifically, many cotton mills were established. Over 40,000 people got jobs. It is estimated that 58,000 home or factory laborers were employed during that time. Napoleon promoted agriculture, especially the growing of sugar beet and other food crops like potatoes. Napoleon did that. Napoleon introduced administrative reforms. Administrative reforms, specifically, what did he do? He maintained the divisions of France into 83 departments. Each department was under a prefect. The prefect would work with directives from Napoleon. Many of these prefects were Napoleon's friends and sometimes relatives. Napoleon made many vital reforms in the field of education. We have talked about that. He introduced the policy of career open to all men, also known as the Legion of Honor, where Napoleon promoted people on merit, and those who had performed very well would be rewarded in public. Then he introduced called Napoleon, which gave France. It brought a lot of harmony in France. What existed were just hanging laws. In other words, with the Code Napoleon, it was now clear and logical. It was very, very easy to implement the law. And Code Napoleon guided the people in France on issues to do with the divorce and marriage. So the code was divided into five codes. We had the civil code, which dealt with the relationships between people. The code of civil procedure, which dealt with how judges should settle cases. The code of criminal procedure, which dealt with offenses against the state. The penal code, which specified punishments for different offenses. And the commercial code, which dealt with the trade and other related issues. And then lastly, Napoleon restored peace. Napoleon restored peace. Napoleon restored order that was lacking during the Directory government. And the very last one, Napoleon improved the French army. All right. Now let us go back to our slides. We stop sharing this one, we go back to our slides, and then we see what do we learn from that. We're here. Yes, our slides are there. We have seen how Napoleon improved a lot of things and achieved greatly for himself, but also for the people of France. And the question is now here. You score Napoleon and give reasons for your score. If you were to score Napoleon on a scale of 10, what would you score him? What would be your score if you were asked to score Napoleon on a scale of 10? Did he succeed 10 over 10? Yes? Babazi, what is your say?
Personally, I would give him an 8.
Justify your 8.
Positively, I would say that he was able to work towards the goal of the French Revolution by bringing equality, liberty, and fraternity. But negatively, to an extent, he was also promoting his own agendas and, to an extent, selfishly working and putting himself in very big positions of power. To an extent, I would say he had developed some characteristics of a dictator to an extent. Yeah.
Great. So Napoleon scored greatly, but again, he had some weaknesses. That's what you're saying. He became a dictator. I agree. And then you said he was also selfish. That wasn't clear. But maybe you meant that he was now mainly working, doing everything for himself. For example, the constitution that he introduced later gave him all the executive powers too. So you realize that Napoleon cannot score a 10 out of 10. Whereas Kirara, your hand is up. Clara, Unmute yourself and say something. Clara, are you there? Clara, if you're there, please unmute and proceed.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you clear.
Okay. My question is,
Mm.
I have a question. You talked about peace. How can you explain about peace so that I can see maybe the same about any percentage?
You're
Yes,
asking about what Napoleon did to bring peace? Yes?
yes,
Okay. Now let us go into it this way. Say that Napoleon restored peace here in the notes. I'm just going to read verbatim. Napoleon restored peace and order in France. This was done by setting up a special state prison that would be used to keep offenders. And then he now used the law to make sure that order prevails in France. He employed the army. He used his spies. And by doing so, he reduced all the chaos in France. So Napoleon used about three tools. He used the army, he used the police, he used the courts, and then he used the prison. So anybody who was found misbehaving would be taken to court, eventually to prison, and the rest kept quiet. That is how he restored peace and order in France. I am hoping I have answered you. Clara,
yes.
your hand is up.
I wanted to add on what
Yes.
if you bring the peace because they signed an agreement, what called a confidence we things. So that's because there was a war between the revolutionaries and the Catholics, that maybe, and
Mm,
most of the people in France were Catholic. So he signed a
mm,
confidence that they can bring to and maybe over the other land for the church was given to the people freely by because of that agreement.
mm.
So maybe can it fit there?
Yes, that is correct. By reconciling the church and the state, now he reduced tension between the Catholic Church and the state by signing the Concordat. And the agreement was signed in 1801, and the agreement was now to give the Catholics some liberty, control over education, and a few other privileges, so that there was little tension between the state and the church. Yes. I can only see Techno Pop 2 Plus and I can't see the name. I'll just ask you to unmute, please. If Let me just ask whoever unmutes first, please go on. I have Clara, I have the person using Techno and Kembabas. Please unmute and proceed.
So, teacher, I wanted to supplement on the point of Napoleon bringing peace. So, before Napoleon's
Mm,
rule and the introduction of the constitution, France didn't have a definite or proper way of handling judicial cases. It was basically a trial and error, whereby
mm,
it was based on the
yeah.
opinion of the person who had the power and not a specific law or guide. So him putting in place codes like the penal code, the criminal code, helped bring a sense of organization in terms of the way they were handling different judicial cases, which helped bring peace and fairness. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. He used the code Napoleon. Thank you. And lastly, I have, if you're using Technopop, please just unmute yourself and speak to us. Your name doesn't reflect here. The only person with the hand up, we are waiting. for you to speak to us. Okay. All right. I think we shall go back there later. But I think we are all now aware that Napoleon did quite a lot of things. And then Napoleon achieved greatly, one for himself, but also for the people of France. Let us now go to the next slide. We go to the next slide. The next slide. Let me first stop sharing this. Then we go to our slides. Okay, we are here. So here we go to our slide here. And the question is there. Discuss the weakness in Napoleon's domestic policy. What are those areas that you think Napoleon did not perform very well in? What are some of the weaknesses that the errors? What are some of those errors that Napoleon made? I can see Michelle saying Napoleon performed 9 out of 10, and other people are saying 8 out of 10. But now let's see what are some of the mistakes he made. Kembawaz.
In my opinion, one of the mistakes he made was giving power to his relatives, nepotism, which is contrary to what he was fighting for, equality, and giving people opportunities based on merit and not ability or um, inf- influence. So basically, he became a contradictory leader by giving his siblings or relatives positions just because they were related to him and not particularly because they had the ability to or were suitable for that specific job.
Thank you very much, Kembawaz. Would you like to explain more the evidence of nepotism? It is true Napoleon practiced nepotism, but who are those people that he appointed who were friends and relatives?
For example, his brother Jerome, I'm not sure that it's Jerome,
Mm,
but he
mm,
was given an opportunity to be the king of Spain, and yet he was not even a Spaniard or Spanish.
mm.
He was French. So that's clear nepotism.
Okay. Oh, thank you very much. Other examples we had Joseph Bonaparte. He became the king of Naples, appointed by Napoleon. Joseph Bonaparte. And then you had Louis Bonaparte. He became the king of Holland in 1806, appointed by Napoleon. Then you had Jerome Bonaparte. He became the king of Westphalia in 1807. Then we had, of course, Carolina Bonaparte, who was his sister. She later became the ruler of Naples, appointed by Napoleon. Then you had Elisa Bonaparte. She later became the Duchess or the ruler of Tuscany, appointed by Napoleon. And then you had Pauline Bonaparte, who was also given very many privileges by Napoleon Bonaparte himself. So it is true that Napoleon made an error by using his relatives mainly to become those rulers. So he practiced nepotism. Any other area where Napoleon made an error, people? Which other area did Napoleon make a mistake? Mujereza, Clara. Clara, your hand is up. Which areas are those where Napoleon made errors, further errors?
So I'm going to talk about continental system, his continental system.
Yeah, his
I
continental
can
system.
like I had little information about it, but I'm going to talk about the little I know.
Yes.
Is that the continental system is all about refusing things of Britain to come to come to Ola because maybe Britain is outside Europe. So they were
Mm,
refusing things to us and so that they can it was preventing things of Britain to come like to enter the Central
mm.
Europe so that
Okay.
maybe so that they can
Okay.
maybe that's all yeah. So
That
that thing
they
like
okay. You thank you very much. Anyone who wants to explain more about the continental system, the story behind the continental system, and how it backfired on Napoleon. It is true that's one of his foreign policies, but it didn't work as planned. Yes, government.
So basically,
Mm,
Napoleon was trying to put in place a continental system so that he
mm,
could reduce or completely stop trade with Britain and
Britain.
Europe. Yes.
Mm,
So obviously, this was going to backfire because Britain was a powerful superpower or a
mm,
powerful country. And inevitably, we see the Papal States headed by, I think, Pope Pius VI start
mm.
to trade with Britain again.
Britain. Mm,
Yes. So that was the first indicator that was going to flop because
mm.
uh, despite him trying to block trade, some states were still trading with Britain. So it
Okay.
inevitably didn't work out, and yeah.
All right. Thank you. Let me just explain something small about the continental system. So Napoleon was on a visit. He went to Milan and then later he went to Berlin. And Napoleon had a dream. He wanted now to bring Britain to her knees. He wanted to make Britain beg France. But he forgot that Britain had the highest quality goods in Europe. And therefore, he wanted to reduce trade, like Kembaba had already said. So Napoleon came up with the orders. Two orders. Is first of all issued the first one asking all people who were under Napoleon's rule not to trade with Britain. And they again issued the second one. So what he forgot is that Britain had the highest quality goods, and therefore Britain also was by that time the most industrialized state that was supplying almost everything, including Napoleon. Napoleon was depending on Britain for boots, for his army, for most of the supplies that goes to the army. So what did Britain do when they received that directive? Now Britain decided not to sell. Britain said, okay, fine, you don't want people to trade with us, so we are not going to sell to anyone. Such that it backfires on Napoleon. So when Britain came up with that policy of refusing to sell to anyone, then there was severe shortage of essential goods in Europe. So the consequence was that most European people now started doing trade with Britain in hiding in the black market. So much that even Napoleon himself also started smuggling military goods from Britain. So the severe shortage that came is what Napoleon did not foresee. So many countries started trading secretly with Britain. And whenever Napoleon got to know about an individual or a group of people or a country trying to trade with Britain, Napoleon would go for war. That explains why when Portugal and Spain traded with Britain secretly, Napoleon declared the Peninsular War. You know the consequence. Napoleon lost that war. He lost 30 of his most trusted generals. And for the first time, Napoleon admitted that he was defeated. Yes, Michelle, your hand is up. You have something to add?
Not really. I
Okay.
was leaving the point.
Yes, you can give us more. We are ready
Um,
listening. Mm.
and Napoleon Bonaparte introduced a discriminative education policy in France.
Mm.
And Napoleon denied female high level
Mm.
of education and discriminate and discrim and rest, re, sorry, restricted
Mm.
restricted their education to needlework
Mm.
and cooking.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
that's all.
Thank you. Napoleon, according to him, women did not need a lot of education because their office is in the kitchen, according to him. But also, on the other hand, Napoleon discouraged the study of some subjects. Remember? Which subjects did Napoleon give little attention? Which subjects? Yes, Michelle.
History, political science. Yes, that's all.
So Napoleon did not like history, political science, and literature. Yes, Clara, your hand was up briefly. I think you're just waving. Which other
Yes.
areas? Yes, you have something to say, Clara.
Okay. I just wanted to change these subjects and I wanted to add literature only.
Yes, thank you. Gloria, your hand is up. Gloria, you want to say something?
History, political science.
Okay. But there are other weaknesses we haven't brought out clearly. We have only talked about education. We have talked about nepotism. Which areas again did Napoleon perform badly? In which areas? Let's
Um,
look. Which areas? Okay. Napoleon over centralized power. The Constitution gave Napoleon a lot of power to appoint all people in France. And we are saying by coming up with a constitution that gave him too much authority, that was in a way a weakness because
Napoleon
it
to
made it very, very
assistant
difficult for people to work with him. So Napoleon had a constitution that gave him a lot of authority. That is what we are saying. Then also Napoleon uh, used the continental system. That one we already talked about how it caused very many wars. You remember the continental system caused Napoleon to arrest the Pope because the Pope violated the continental system.
his
The
number was
continental system caused
his
the
number was
Peninsular War. The
his
continental
name
system caused the Moscow campaign. Then Napoleon later became a dictator, unfortunately, because the constitution was giving him a lot of power. And over time, Napoleon's popularity started declining. Slowly by slowly, Napoleon's popularity was beginning to decline. Maybe we go into the notes and we see where Napoleon performed poorly so that people can surely see. Code Napoleon had some weaknesses. It is true that it is specified issues to do with the marriage and the property, but Code Napoleon gave the men a lot of power. All the property belonged to the man, and I think that is in some way made the woman very insecure in their marriages. Napoleon promoted the nepotism. We have already talked about that. In the establishment of the Legion of Honor, Napoleon led the return of another social class. This was because it led to the creation of a class of talented people who were given distinguished positions and therefore bringing back the division within the society. So Code Napoleon was good, but Code Napoleon again made some people to feel special. So you can see that indeed Napoleon performed very well, but also Napoleon had a lot of weaknesses. Napoleon's secret police, the spy network, was commanded by his friend called Joseph Fouché. But it is true, and it is on record that many people were arrested, many people were tortured, many people were imprisoned, and some were killed because of fear, because Napoleon feared what? Opposition. So let's go back to our slides again. We go back to our slide and we see the last question here. So the last question is there. What policy lessons must African leaders learn from Napoleon Bonaparte? Which areas do we have to learn from? Kebabas.
I feel like the first and most obvious is to stop nepotism and to allocate positions according to ability and merit and not due to relation or obligation.
Thank you very much. And I'm throwing this question back to you, Kebabas. If you in the future become the head of state of this country, will you comfortably ignore your relatives and friends because you want to be a clean leader?
I wouldn't ignore them. I would maybe find a way of
Eh,
supporting them, but not putting them in power just because I'm related to them. Because there's a level of integrity one should have to lead a country.
Thank you very much, our future head of state. All right, other people, Jermaine, what do you have to say?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, yes, we are hearing you.
Mm, Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jermaine.
Yeah. For me, what I think the leaders should do
Mm,
to modernize the economy, the economy of
mm,
the country, and infrastructure development, whereby we
yeah,
can modernize the economy and the infrastructure of France.
thank you very much. In other words, you also agree that one of the drivers of development is infrastructure in the line of roads, in the line of transport. Generally, you should put that network ready for people to come in. And I was trying to look at East Africa. If you look at East Africa today, which country is doing very well in terms of progress in the area of infrastructure? I wanted to look at Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. How are we faring compared to other neighboring countries? Yes, Kembabas.
I would say Kenya stands out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenya stands out. Okay, okay, okay. Right. I can see Raymond. What do you say? Richmond. I see Richmond. I read it as Raymond. Okay, please unmute yourself and give us your view.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, now I can say that Tanzania is running out.
Tanzania is running fast.
Yes,
Why do
it's
you
right.
say so?
If you check
Why do you say so?
you give an example of this railway
Hmm.
that has given by all East African countries to set up in their different countries.
Mm.
And you see the rate at which Tanzania built its railway,
Mm.
the standard that they are following,
Mm.
beating up the fast growing countries in the world.
Okay. Thank you. I've also seen those videos and how people talk about Tanzania. The Tanzania Railway has gone far, much better than the Kenyan and even ours here. In fact, ours here has not even we haven't started. We are still at the stage of what? I think at the stage of thinking. Anyway, so if you're a leader, you should make sure that infrastructure becomes priority. And I think that's what John Pombe Magufuli was doing. And now his successor is doing also very well. Make sure you don't forget infrastructure. Clara, what other lessons do we learn from Napoleon?
First of all, I just wanted to add on the other point of maybe the
Mm,
dynasty, where you
mm,
asked maybe you were in a position, won't you hire your family members because you want to be a good leader? I can bring
mm,
out a balance of power. Like you should balance because if Napoleon wants to give this like oh his brothers, like he was given position, this position, becoming king, like
mm,
at least maybe his brother, the assistant to the president or to the king of that thing, so that he can supervise but under the other king. Yeah? But
mm,
to balance, like you put someone like a Spain, you should bring a king in Spain, then you put someone like monitoring him as your brother, so that you can balance that thing. So like leaders of this country, like Uganda, should balance power. Like when you make it, maybe I'm told that the minister of this of health, you make to balance, you make them Uganda this one of that. That you can balance, even though you should hire your people, but even you should balance power. That's what I say.
mm. Thank you very much. Hire people, but balance. Don't just, okay. I understand that very well. Clara, your hand is up. What other lesson do we learn from Napoleon? Remember, we learn from the good things he did, but also learn from his mistakes. Richmond, what is your say?
Yes, on the Africa, what African leaders should learn. In one of the statements of
Hmm,
Napoleon, there is a
hmm,
point to give out that men, whereby he mentioned that men are rewarded with toys.
yes.
Then I believe that African leaders should learn to appreciate their coordinators that they work with. As you see that the
Hmm,
people who are working in military, basically, meaning as you can see that Napoleon focused more on the military side.
hmm,
Same applies to the African leaders. So if the president is having some ministers that are
yes.
helping him on the ground, let
Hmm,
him try to at least appreciate those ministers so that will give them a morale or will boost
hmm.
their motivation to work more. That's why in Napoleon had we have that point of appreciating people who used to work a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Do you
believe that.
think that Okay, thank you very much. Do you think that is there anything that we are doing in line with that here in Uganda? Or is there anything that we're doing that is similar to what Napoleon was doing? Career open to all men, where people are recognized and rewarded on merit in public here in Uganda?
One thing I know about the career open talent, whereby someone
Hmm.
is given something basing on the potential or the ability.
Okay.
But here in Uganda, it's now whereby we are in a situation of taking no call, no who,
No.
we are not
Hmm.
on or how much you are talented, how
Hmm.
how qualification that you are having, but it depends in
Hmm.
the position or in that job where you are going. Do you have any person close? Whereby Uganda, we
Hmm.
are not close to that point.
Okay.
In Uganda, we are just doing the
I.
opposite. Whereby you find a school whereby the head teacher might be the head
Hmm.
of the class, and then you find the boss is the brother or a sister to the head teacher. And when there are
Ah,
people having papers there,
and the wife is the basa.
exactly, whereby the students also after schooling, they'll come back as teachers.
I feel your pain. Thank you very much. Yes, Kiambabas.
Yes, she was going to talk about the 26th of January. I think that's NRM Day, whereby
Yes.
different people of in different sectors in the country are recognized. Let's say in the
Mm,
military, in education, in
mm,
agriculture.
mm.
So could we compare that to the love of honor, whereby Napoleon advocated for the recognition of different achievements in different sectors to promote the growth and improved development of France?
Yes, we can say that is one lesson that Uganda has learned from Napoleon. But the question is, so who compiles the list of those people who are being rewarded? Because that could also be another question. But it is true that is something that is related to what Napoleon was doing. I think even on Heroes Day, there are people who are recognized as heroes and they are given trophies. Those trophies and medals come with some cash prizes. That is something related to career open to all men. But still, there is a big question. Who is in charge of the compilation of the list of people who are being recognized by the head of state? Yes. Richmond, do you have
Uh,
input?
I think different departments. For example, let me give an example of the entertainment sector. Every at the
Mm,
beginning of the year, we see Bebe Cool compiling or coming up with a list.
mm.
So I believe it depends the department. That different departments, their heads are appreciated. It's because
Yes.
you see that the president appreciates the minister. Then I think it's the minister to appreciate the workers that are under him,
Mm,
because you see that you might find that this minister is promoted from this position to this position. This person in the police is promoted from this position basing on how you are. I mean that it is the head of that department where you
mm.
are working from to submit in form of
That
a
you
report.
want in form of a report.
Yes.
All right. Very good. I see we are really doing very well. Kembabazi, you have something to add?
Yes, sure. In addition, I feel like to an extent
Mm,
there's a bit of favoritism or nepotism when there's compilation of those lists. Because if I feel
uh,
like one is to be keen and
mm,
takes note of the different people that are represented in the sectors, you find that
mm.
one person um, is being over recognized, and yet if you are to follow up with their contribution to that particular sector, one would not consider it um, worthy of constant recognition.
Okay. Maybe then now the lesson should be that if you are the leader, then you must be very, very keen on that list. When that list has been made, is there proof? Like if someone says, okay, we are recognizing this person, then you must go back and verify if what people are saying is actually true. Recently, in one of our WhatsApp groups in my village there, so someone was recognized that he had on Heroes Day, by the way. No, it was on Labor Day. On Labor Day, he was recognized that he had done a lot and his impact is felt in society. So for me, my concern was that this guy was a primary teacher. And then in the write-up that was given to the president to support the person for recognition, it is indicated that the guy was a secondary school teacher. And everybody knew that it was not true, and everybody was quiet. People were just happy that you see one of our very own has been also recognized. So sometimes you find that there are some factual errors that can make people not to take the whole agenda seriously. So now that is the lesson for us to learn. Other lessons we should be learning from Napoleon people. I'm trying to look into the charts to see if there is a response. I say that he violated the concordat policy. I think that is not one of the weaknesses. Which other lessons should we learn if we are to, let's get Babas.
I feel we can also pick a leaf from Napoleon in terms of education.
Mm,
I feel like the president had a good initiative of putting in place the UPE schools, but failed to
mm,
follow up accordingly. Hence, its failure to an
mm,
extent. So I feel like he can put people in place or personally follow up with the UPE program and also
mm,
put in place more schools and also better learning facilities for people and also back to the new curriculum,
mm,
putting better reforms for the new curriculum because the new curriculum is a bit rushed and we are
mm,
all suffering, teachers and students. So if maybe they could be more intentional about it and first be prepared and then properly introduce it.
mm.
Well, it's already introduced, but if they could do better in terms of implementation, it would be great for the nation.
Yes, thank you very much, Kembabazi. Like you said, so many things have been done in good intentions, but the manner in which the rollout is done. UPE has become a mess. You see, children go to school, there are no books, there are no teachers. It's a big mess down there. If you look at many of these public universities, there are now just so many. And some of them don't have students, by the way, but they are public universities. Then you come here and look at this new curriculum. You people recall, your books came in senior three. Teachers taught without books senior one, senior two, senior three. Right now we are teaching senior five. NCDC has not released even the teacher's guide. All they have given is the syllabus book, and that syllabus book is in a soft copy. Nobody has a hard copy of the syllabus book. And now the teachers must teach. I suspect books may start coming after you have started, after you have sat your exams next year. So you can see the whole big mess. And if you look at the leadership of education, we have a big problem. So what do? We need to be very intentional, like she said, and also have to plan better. But I think the biggest challenge is that the government lacks funds. So we need more money in the education ministry. Can you imagine? The government has very few schools. Most of these schools where people go to, they are private schools. Some of these schools are owned by individuals, and many of the schools are owned by the church. The government just recently claimed ownership of many of these schools. So the government doesn't have schools for Ugandans, and it is a big challenge. Yes, Richmond.
Yeah, Master, to start with yours, with that point
Mm,
of, in most cases, now you check in the schools that we are having, and that as
mm,
you are saying that they are owned, for in my perspective, I see that most of the schools are owned by government officials.
mm-hmm,
By you, why doesn't the government take the initiative of informing those government officials instead of putting money in their own business, they combine and then they build up or they support the UPE. That since they are in the same government, they first support the government system or the government program. But Ella, you can see that since the government is not caring, everyone is on his own. Someone can have a big school even competing with a government official school, but they are both
mm,
work the same government. You find a UPE or a UCE school, USE school, then you wonder, is it a government school? Because if it is for a government, we think it's supposed to be even better than a private school.
Yes,
But
that is the what happens in Rwanda. In
but you find
Rwanda,
that
the pub.
yes, you find that a school owned by a government, it is in a worse condition even compared to a private school. Therefore, I go back to the point of Napoleon, whereby the government leaders, all the African leaders, we should learn to appreciate the little they have. Since according to Napoleon was overwhelmed with increasing the size of France. Now, those are the wars that we are having nowadays. Leaders are fighting hard to increase on the size of their land. So, African leaders should learn to appreciate the little they have, not to compete with Napoleon, who gazetted a bigger empire, which led to his downfall. Because if you look in his factors that led to his downfall, he had a lot of states that he could not govern, whereby some states even no longer had the interest of his powers.
I agree. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Those policies are supposed to be picked up by the African leaders.
African leaders have a lot of things to learn from Napoleon. Jermaine, you have something to add? We are
Okay.
listening.
Yes, on that matter, the African leaders should develop nationalism and unity for their country. Because if these guys have the heart of their country, they could not do such things. Owning schools, competing with government schools. Such things. So they should develop nationalism and unity.
Yes, thank you very much. They should be patriotic.
Yes.
Let's have Clara first, then Kimbabazi. Clara, you can unmute yourself. Talk to us.
Been thinking about many points here. First of all, the gender equality should be encouraged. Because one day maybe Napoleon was having a friends conference, and one person came, was a journalist, and came over. It's called Louis, a woman, and he said that he said that women over should cook food over what and food, and he undermined women, of which is not
Yes.
good, and they should
So I agree.
be
We should emphasize equality and give women equal opportunities. True. That was an error where African leaders should not follow that path. Then, Kimbabazi, your opinion.
okay. I have even another point.
Clara, you're coming after Kimbabazi. You're coming after Kimbabazi, then Clara next.
I was going to talk about how African leaders should be as intentional as Napoleon was. Napoleon, from how he placed his policies, he was very intentional about the reforms he wanted to put into place, and he was a very ambitious leader. Many times we see African leaders, especially during the election period, which we're having next year, we're going to see so many policies being put forward, maybe improvement of education, improvement in agriculture, improvement in infrastructure. But after getting power, we never see these things actualize. So maybe if the African leaders could pick a leaf and be as intentional, and maybe if they promise to improve infrastructure, we see some roads being worked on, schools being built. Yeah. So I'll talk about them picking a lesson, or picking okay, being intentional as he was.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Then Clara next.
So my point is, there is a question in it, like encouraging regular subjects like literature, history, even bring awareness to us, and of which even maybe our
Yes.
president tries to by telling by giving more salary to what's that word
Science teachers.
giving less money
So that
to the, yeah, so that he can discourage them from, maybe so that they can they can get disappointed, they get that, so that they can leave those subjects and of which is making
mm,
maybe the to fail. But if they
mm,
encourage, like, they'll bring awareness to us and we fight for power. So like like maybe this kind of thing, selfish things is going to come. Like people don't want to leave
mm.
power. So maybe you can add on. I don't know whether the point has come out. Like the point is there,
Eh,
but the question is how is it helping the one in power so that they can remain in power? Like Napoleon, he he never wanted people to learn liberal subject because he never wanted that thing to become a thorn to him. So if Museveni is encouraging this, how is it helping him?
Thank you very much. Clearly, you have brought it out very clear. You said that the lesson we should learn is that we shouldn't fear some subjects. But in our case here, it is also clear that some subjects are also a threat to the state. Clearly, history, if you look at the number of history students right now, for you who is in a history class, you may not be aware that history is dying slowly. Why? How did they do this? They did it technically. So they made other subjects that were initially not principal subjects. They all became principal subjects. So that history now becomes one of the hard optional subjects. So now we have so many subjects that have become principal subjects, and the number in the history classes has reduced. Last year, we marked, I think, 32,000 students across the country. And it has been reducing by the rate of, I think, 5,000, 4 to 5,000 every year. So history is slowly declining in numbers. The same with literature. Literature is also declining in numbers, and there are so many other policies. So the lesson should be that let us give equal treatment to all the subjects. Let us give all the teachers and people who have done these other subjects the same pay. I think clearly you can see that right now the direction is in the direction of sciences. If you wanted just, teachers in government schools get the science teachers get 3 times the pay of their counterparts, the arts teachers. That is how big the gap is, and that is not a good lesson to learn. So ours, we have learned the bad side of Napoleon instead. Any other lesson we should learn? We have only 10 minutes, remember? We have only 10 minutes. Yes, Richmond.
Now, Master, now my point. I'm not giving a point, but I'm just supplementing. I'm inquiring about something.
Mm,
Can't the government stand out and talk about the government programs that, because each and every day we hear teachers are complaining, and they're only government teachers that are complaining.
mm,
Can the government stand up and say that in order to become this in the government, this is your salary, this is your net, this is your what? So as to avoid all such things, because you find that in the contracts they are giving out different things, as you see,
mm,
the private schools that when you sign a contract that I'm supposed to receive around
mm,
500,000, then in paying you give me
mm,
everything that I'm receiving 300, meaning that you are
mm,
taking out 400, meaning that I'm supposed to even file a case in the court. We have an agreement. But you find that someone is just given a job in the government school, they get excited, then after all, they start complaining about the money that they are paid. But if they are given a contract showing that they are supposed to receive 300,000 a month, and also art
mm,
teachers are supposed to receive around, if the other are 300, then this one, if they are receiving 250, why could
mm.
they pick up cases? So I'm just inquiring, can't the government come up with a better program for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kimbabazi, you want to respond to that one? Or you have something else to add
No,
or respond to him?
I was giving a different submission, but I feel like my opinion on what he has said is that I feel like to an extent, art teachers really did try to fight for themselves and for
Yes.
the salary they're being given, but it was literally a situation beyond them. Like there's only much they can do.
Maybe just to add on a bit, these people before you remember the salary enhancement, they call it salary enhancement. It came a few years ago. But initially the teachers were paid the same. So the problem came when the enhancement was only in favor of the science what? The science teachers. And that's when the arts teachers started striking. They have striked several times. But each time they strike, they just get promises, promises, promises. So at the moment, what is happening is that the enhancement has not happened for the arts teachers. The last time they went to State House, they promised them that their salary is going to be enhanced in phases. So every year they are going to enhance their salary by 25%. So it will take them 4 years to reach the level of their counterparts who are the science teachers. Apparently, that is where they are. All right, Kembabazi first, then Clara.
Yes, I was going to talk about how African leaders can be as okay equal or compassionate as Napoleon was, because we could see Napoleon was really fighting for the third class people's rights. Because after Napoleon had gotten power, we're seeing that some of the nobles and clergy were fighting for land that
Mm,
the the third class citizens had attained after the revolution, and the fact that he considered their complaints or requests for that land back null and void shows that he was for the people and for their rights, and he was in support of them keeping that land, which we can see African leaders of today are the ones who are actually grabbing land from, the what would consider the third class citizens or the underprivileged people. So maybe they could pick a leaf of fighting for the people rather than being the ones who are oppressing them.
again, thank you very much. Then Clara, we have 6 minutes. Clara, you're
My
on.
point is, I don't
Mm,
know whether how to phrase the point, but I'll give the explanation, then you give the point. Here,
mm,
one of the states of Napoleon that he brought a constitution that brought a lot of, the constitution gave him a lot of freedom, of which even today we
mm,
see that this kind of age limit maybe was limited in parliament, but one day
mm,
Museveni came, I support Museveni, but he came out with the age limit and he said that to be extended like any time, like you can be a leader like at any age you want, of which like
mm,
it's constitution and there is a lot of freedom, of which for him it brought a lot of problems to her, to Napoleon. So I don't know how to phrase the
mm.
point like that.
Thank you. I think it takes us back to what we said earlier, that again we have learned the bad side of Napoleon. Right. So it's not good to have a constitution that gives a lot of authority. Like in our case here, it is not good. Let us say it is bad to manipulate the constitution in your favor because Napoleon did it and it brought him trouble. Even ours, we have done it. We are not sure where it will end. All right, Richmond, your last submission.
Yes, now I have around two.
Mm,
Because now, first, one of the former speakers, one of the colleagues, talked about education.
mm,
Then you are like the
mm,
curriculum. I think it is in the government whereby they're just trying to pass out their own things. Because in many different countries, they're afraid to change things, but they come up with a change. But after planning how much it will cost and in what period the money will be brought up. Now you come out in Uganda saying that Uganda, they just come up with an idea of changing the curriculum after all the government says that we don't have money. Mean that they're just putting up things that that is favoring the government. Because in most
so it
cases,
is deliberate.
yes, the countries that want change, in order to come up with change, they come up with a plan, the budget, and how they are supposed to get that money. But in Uganda, you just hear that they are having a new curriculum. New curriculum, after all, they pose up some things, they say we don't have money. Mean that they brought up something, not considering the budget or the outcomes that will come out late after processing the plan. Now, another thing is like in this new curriculum, I doubt, because you might find that there are some teachers out of experience, besides these new teachers who are now just coming in, the student teachers, but there are those teachers, even a new curriculum student can sit down and teach a class basing on the new curriculum. So I'm wondering, are the students more equipped than the teachers, or the teachers are more equipped than the students? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have only 2 minutes. Our lesson will automatically shut down. But in the new curriculum, we do learning, and it is called the collaboration. So the teacher teaches and gives opportunities to students, just like we have been doing here. So it's not that the students are more informed than the teachers. It is deliberate that the teachers give opportunities to students to bring out their views. And it is one way of doing what? Of teaching. So for us, sometimes when you are talking, like now, I am busy taking notes. I am busy observing if we are face to face. And by doing so, I am assessing and learning is going on. So guys, we have only 1 minute. It has been a good lesson, very interactive. I thank people who have been very active. And for the rest of us, let's have a good day. It's now 4 o'clock. I'm going to post this PowerPoint in the group, and then the recording will be shared. Have a good afternoon.
Thank
In case you
you.
have In case you have anything, you can always follow me in my inbox. Bye-bye.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome.